Jacob, are you a little bit nervous?
I'm not too nervous, honestly. After seeing Kronovi's own goal last week, it should be easy.
Hey, you do my job for me, Crow. He's already talking trash, man. What do you got to say?
I mean, if I can get away with own goaling it, we can still win. What does that say? I plan on own goaling it every single game and still getting a 4-0.
Still scoreless. The ball has spent a good 10 seconds in the iBuyPower box. It doesn't matter. Kronovi going to carry this over everybody and put it in. This is why they are considered the best team in America.
That's the thing right there,
That's
everybody.
the thing,
Look at that shot coming out from Kronovi. That is a hug in the camera moment.
Perhaps the only thing harder than becoming a pro Rocket League player is staying one. There are only a select few pros from the early days of competitive Rocket League who have managed to stay relevant, and one less now that Fireburner has announced his retirement. In an ever-changing meta, it is virtually impossible to stay in contention at the highest level in competitive Rocket League without dedicating most, if not all, of your life to this game. There is one Rocket League pro whose determination to win hasn't wavered since the beginning of this game, in spite of being the first ever world champion among a group of pros who have long since left the scene. This is the story of Kronovi, the player who inspired players all over the world to do what seemed impossible in the hardest game ever made. On August 7th of 2016, Kronovi led his team, iBuyPower, to the biggest upset in competitive Rocket League history to date, on the biggest stage to date. The next month, Kronovi's team was picked up by G2 Esports. This was huge for the esports scene to have a major org like G2 get on board with the game. Kronovi was the king of Rocket League, playing for a team that appeared to have everything it needed to continue its dominance. But with Rocket League's emergence as a new and exciting esport, more and more new faces appeared as contenders. It wasn't just players who had played the prequel to Rocket League anymore, there were a bunch of new people, and they were really good. The next season, Kronovi and the new G2 roster went 2-5 in league play, failing to qualify for LAN and ultimately disbanding as a team. Now this was a massive disappointment for so many fans. This was the biggest Rocket League team in the world, and Kronovi was still the biggest player in the world. Kronovi stayed with G2, but Lichinio and Overzero left, and the Rocket League world waited through a really long offseason, wondering who he would bring in to replace these two players. Kronovi decided to bring in Rizzo from Take3 and JNaps from Denial, and under this roster, G2 looked to have a solid team and a good shot at making the World Championship. But in spite of going 3-0 to start league play in Season 3, they failed to win their next 3 matches, making it impossible for them to have the automatic qualification for LAN. They would have to beat Denial in the regional championship. Now this series went all the way to Game 7, but G2 was ultimately upset by the 6 seed team. A devastating second season with G2 for Kronovi, as they failed yet again to make it to the World Championship. And as G2 kind of fell off the map a little bit, other teams like Cloud9 and NRG really became the staple teams of North American Rocket League. Now, not making it to LAN this season, I think this is one of the most devastating moments in Kronovi's career. He'd gone from being the face of Rocket League and the most dominant player the game had ever seen to struggling to beat teams and players with a fraction of his experience. Rocket League was changing, teams were getting more experience, and Kronovi was forced to either adapt and grow or be completely left in the dust by these new teams like so many other SART players had already been. There were many questions surrounding G2 as a team. Why couldn't such a talented roster hang with the best? And even more interesting, was Kronovi actually the problem at this point? But instead of disbanding, this time G2 decided to stick it out and see what they could do as a team as they entered Season 4 of RLCS. They showed promise, taking down virtually every NA team in league play, qualifying for LAN despite losing early in the regional championship. This play that you're about to see versus Gale Force kind of summarizes G2 as a team. Almost there, but just not quite.
Oh, as a big demo as well is going to happen. Pass over to Kronovi. Kronovi back over to JNaps. JNaps looking for Rizzo, who's a little bit too close, but he can still make something out of this. And the Rizzo is on the goal line. The spot there. Violet Panda with the clear away. G2.
Season 5 would be a similar story. G2 won the regional championship, showing glimpses of their potential abilities, only to lose again early in the world championship to Complexity and Evil Geniuses, two teams that they should have beaten easily. It appeared as though this roster just did not have what it takes to compete in the highest pressure situations. In Season 6, they went 6-1 in league play and took second at the regional championships, only to lose out early again at the world championship. Now, shortly after this season, it was announced that Kronovi was actually being dropped from the G2 squad squad to be replaced by the next up-and-comer rookie Chicago, a player who showed similar control and poise to Justin at his first World Championship. G2 had finally parted ways with their fearless leader from Season 2, and it was clear that on some level, they believed Kronovi to actually be the problem. Dropping someone like Kronovi isn't something that just happens. This isn't like any other trade or transfer from any other team. This is like Cloud9 dropping Squishy down the road. There has to be good reason to give up a player like that who has so many fans. And there's no denying that this move was a good one for G2. The team went on to have more success at a World Championship than they'd ever had, taking down the biggest and best teams in the world, including Vitality and PSG, only to lose in the grand finals. It was their best season yet, and it happened immediately after replacing Kronovi. I'll be completely honest with you, I thought that this was the end of the road for Kronovi. I thought that he would either retire from Rocket League or just do maybe one more season. I didn't think he would be able to have much success with a new roster, especially when you consider what his options were. There was really nowhere to go in North America. The top 3 rosters were basically locked in, and outside of those teams, few orgs have really had any sort of like long-term success. But the story wasn't over for Kronovi. He had 2 choices, either end his career on a relatively low note, never getting back to the glory and success of his early days as a competitor, or build up a new team with players who've never been at the top or even close to the top. It was announced shortly after that Kronovi would be going to Rogue, an org that placed second to last in Season 6. But Rogue was a new team now. They were now AJ and Wonder, 2/3 of the main roster from FlyQuest, who had placed 5th at the regional championship and had a really solid season as RLCS rookies coming out of RLRS. A great team, no doubt, a great roster, but they hadn't really proven themselves against the best teams in the world. Things didn't look good for this squad early on in league play, as they were 1-3 in their first 4 matches going into week 5 of league play. They either had to beat Space Station Gaming or NRG. Rogue was able to beat Space Station, but then they lost to NRG. Still, Rogue had a long road ahead of them if they wanted to qualify for the World Championship. They'd qualified for the regional championships, but now they had to face Ghost Gaming in their first match, a team that had 3-0'd them in week 4 of league play. They had to come out a completely different team if they wanted to beat Ghost. Ghost was able to take the series to Game 6 in an 8-minute overtime, but Rogue took the series in another long overtime in Game 6. Again, Rogue still had to beat Space Station Gaming to qualify for Worlds as the 4 seed, which they did relatively easy with a 4-0 sweep. So Rogue had proven that they could play at least against some of the better teams, but they still hadn't beaten the best teams, and they'd still been swept by NRG. They had a lot to prove going into Worlds, and they had a tough pool. Now at this point, any wins at Worlds would be a success, and would prove to the world that Kronovi wasn't the man holding teams back. He'd taken this roster to places they couldn't go on their own, and now it was time to show just how good they could be, with 2 LAN rookies and the veteran himself. Now this season's Worlds was set up a bit different. It was actually set up as a pool, so each team was placed in a pool with 2 other teams based on seeding. So Rogue had to face off against the European powerhouse 2 seed FC Barcelona, a team with more experience and talent than just about any other team, and the dominant 1 seed from OCE, the Renegades. Rogue 3-1 both teams in the pool, qualifying for Day 3, and also 3-1 to Triple Trouble in the bracket play. After a horrible start to league play, Rogue had qualified for Worlds and were now proving that they could beat the best teams in the world. So now it was time for Rogue to face off against their new rivals, G2, Kronovi and his new squad against his old teammates. Unfortunately for Kronovi and Rogue, G2 swept them 4-0 in the series to qualify for the grand finals. Not saying that G2 isn't better than Rogue, they probably are, at least they were at this point, but G2 really was playing the best that they'd ever played, and there wasn't a lot that Rogue could do to be able to hang with them. Now this is where we leave off at this point, with G2 in a better place without Kronovi, but with Kronovi honestly in a better place than with G2. Now that's the biggest surprise, that Kronovi could leave G2 and go on to play with a team of rookies and take them farther than he had ever gone with G2. Now when Rocket League esports kicked off and Kronovi's team formed, they were incredibly dominant. Nobody was even playing the same kind of game as Kronovi, even his teammates weren't. But that first season of RLCS got going, and Kronovi found himself in a place with a team that needed to bounce back from adversity. Their star player Gambit, arguably the best player in the world at that time, had to leave before the World Championships. Like, he wasn't able to play in the World Championships for personal reasons, but they went on to win win their first RLCS with a sub. Now that squad disbanded under the pressure, so Kronovi had to put together another team from scratch. That team struggled for multiple seasons, only for Kronovi to end up getting kicked off. He built up another team from scratch and took them farther than he'd been in years against the best competition in the world, in a game that literally doesn't even look like the same game from the first time he won. But when you look at Kronovi's career and you think about Rocket League, isn't that what Rocket League is really all about? Coming back from adversity? It's not the games where you win 5-0 that really do anything for you. It's those times when you start out a match and you're down 2 goals like just 40 seconds into the game and you go, okay, we have to get these back. Adversity is what forces you to grow both as a competitor and a person. You can actually go watch old clips from when Rocket League first came out, and Kronovi was not the same person he is today. It's not just that he grew up, he's a completely different person. He's learned that you have to change, you have to adapt, and you have to grow if you want to stay relevant. This is what I admire most about Kronovi, and it's why I'm still a Kronovi fan, and why I think his career has been one of the most interesting careers in Rocket League. It's an unexpected career. I don't think it's what people thought, but it's what's happened, and he's dealt with it so well. So if the day ever comes for Kronovi to pick up that trophy again, nobody, and I mean nobody, will be able to say that it wasn't earned.